Hello everyone and welcome to the SCG Near Surface Geophysics Technical Section Student Subcommittee's webinar on how to network at conferences, which is part of our webinar series on critical skills. The SCG Near Surface Subcommittee and myself, Chinaze Mary Arukwe, will serve as your hosts for today's webinar. Before we begin, the model for this webinar will be a short presentation followed by an extended question and answer section. During the Q&A section, if you'd like to ask your questions, please raise your hand in the webinar interface and SCG will adjust your settings to allow you ask your question directly to the presenter. Alternatively, please place your questions in the Q&A box found in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen when you move your cursor over the bottom of the screen. So today's presenter is Leah Martinez. Leah Martinez is a geophysical engineer working with Mount Sopris Instruments in Denver, Colorado. She received her BSc degree in geophysical engineering with a minor in physics from the Colorado School of Mines in 2007. Her master's thesis work in archaeology at the University of Denver from 2008 to 2010 was completed over 2 summers, applying ground-penetrating radar to a pre-Icahn Mound site in Highland, Ecuador. Leah has worked with Mount Sopris Instruments since 2013. Her work includes sales, field training, online marketing, equipment development, and technical support for geophysical borehole instrumentation and software around the world. Leah speaks Spanish and frequently travels to other countries to teach geophysical logging applications for groundwater, environmental, and mining applications. She is past secretary of the Society of Exploration Geophysicists Near Surface Technical Section and past VP committees and member at large for the Environmental and Engineering Geophysical Society. Leah Martinez has more than 15 years networking experience in both science and non-science environments, attending well over 10 conferences a year and weekly local meetups. Thank you, Leah, for joining us today. You're welcome, and the mic is yours now.
Thank you so much for that introduction. That was really kind of you. I just want to say hi to everybody on the call who's come in. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend this. This is going to be about a topic that, normally isn't talked about within our geophysical community. So I was really excited when the SCG reached out to me and asked me if I would be willing to give a talk on this topic, because I think it's something that is important in our field and in our industry and just doesn't get the focus that it does. The majority of my background and experience in networking at conferences in general has come from just in the field experience, on the job experience. I've been doing it for 10 years in a sales and marketing role for Mount Sopris and working with customers and trying to problem solve in real time, whether it be in an exhibition booth or whether it be at a mine site. So trying to figure out what solutions we can offer them. So in fact, I just got back from, as people on this call know, I just returned from 3 weeks in South America, where I attended a conference in Santiago, Chile, and then attended another conference in Lima, Peru. And I will be flying out here in a week to attend another conference in Mazatlan, Mexico. So I'm constantly attending conferences for geophysics. In addition to that, I'm constantly attending conferences in my extracurricular hobbies as well, which I'll get into here in a second. So first things first, I just wanted to start off with a basic slide talking about who I am so that I have a little bit of credibility with everybody on the call. Who is actually giving you this presentation about how to network at conferences. Who am I? Up here in the upper left corner, I've got a picture of graduating from the Colorado School of Mines back in 2007 when I was a little bit younger and more fresh-faced than I am today. So graduated with a background in geophysics. And as they were saying, went on to get a master's degree in archaeology. And this picture here in the top middle is a picture of the archaeological site I worked on in Northern Highland, Ecuador. So those are two key fundamental backgrounds to my career. Since then, so since getting those degrees, I've actually gone into borehole geophysics as an application, which really has nothing to do with archaeology. So I took, a right turn, as many of us do in our careers, and went from archaeology into borehole geophysics. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. So these bottom pictures are showing, this bottom left one is working at a mine site in, this one was in Chile at a lithium mine site out in the Salar de Atacama in the Atacama Desert. And the middle bottom picture is of me working with some younger hydrogeologists that had just graduated in Myanmar that were working on for the Myanmar Water Department, and we're working on borehole drilling related to groundwater resources. The pictures on the right-hand side are a little bit more on the personal side. The upper right-hand side, that's myself and my husband, that's actually a picture from the day that we met. So that is a picture of the day we met, which was at a mine site in Peru, if you can believe that. So don't believe people when they tell you that love doesn't blossom at a mine site. Sometimes it does. We've been married for almost 5 years now, together for 7. And so that's part of my personal life. And he's a geologist as well. And in the lower right-hand corner, I kind of included a small picture of, real estate clip art. So that is the hobby that I was talking about that I do in the free time. And so a lot of the information that I'm going to show here in this presentation actually comes from networking and skills training classes that I have taken as a part of my hobby in real estate, which I'm not an agent, I'm just an investor in my free time, but I have taken a number of classes related to this, week-long classes and courses. And what I'm going to be presenting here in this presentation is really just a short snippet of that. It goes a lot deeper and it can get a lot more complex, but I hope you find some of this information as interesting as I did when I first learned about it. I think there's a lot of crossover between both the sales side of things and also anthropology, right? Understanding humans and how we work together and how we communicate. And I'll be the first to tell you that I struggle with a lot of these concepts myself. I could be a better listener myself, and that's something that we'll talk about. But I think it's good to know the ground rules so that we at least have, a level playing field to start from. Okay, so let's see here. So conferences and introvert's nightmare. So I hate that feeling when you arrive at a conference and let's say it's the evening networking event, right? And everybody's got a drink in their hands or everybody's supposed to talk to somebody around them and network. And all you see is this sea of people in front of you. It's just like, it looks like an ocean of people. And you look around and everybody's at their own little, table, or they're at their own high top and they're in these groups, right? They're all in their little groups as you look around the room, and it's very nerve-wracking for an introvert. And I used to be very introverted, but I've now somehow trained myself to be a little bit more extroverted. You can train yourself to be extroverted, by the way. It is something you can learn. But I remember I used to be really afraid when I would look across that room and it would just be this sea of people in all of these different groups. And I would just have this panic moment where I would think, oh my gosh, how do I break into one of these groups? What am I even going to say? Am I going to be interesting? Are they going to be even interested in talking to me? Or are they just going to turn their backs on me and walk away? There's this, for some of us who are, lean introverted, it can be really nerve-wracking to look at a sea of people and then try and get up the nerve to even approach a group and start talking to what looks like this kind of sealed group that won't let you in. So some of what I'm going to talk about hopefully will help you get over that step, because it is a hurdle. I recognize that it is a hurdle to get over, but in talking to people, what I have learned is that I think of each person now almost like a little treasure chest. Like each person is their own individual treasure chest. And if I can talk to them, then I can just find out all of this neat, interesting information that they know and I don't. So if that's part of the goal in talking to people in a networking event is, you know, what are some of these gems that I can gain from this conversation? So setting some of the ground rules when it comes to attending conferences, especially in a networking event at a conference, these are some of the things just to keep in mind in general. One, unless a person seems key to your goals, maybe limit your talk time to them to 5 to 10 minutes per person. Think of it as speed dating, right? One of the goals of networking at a conference is to really meet a couple of key people that are going to get you to whatever your goal is. And we'll talk about your goals later in a later slide. But one of the key things to keep in mind, and I run into this pit myself, is I can somehow find myself talking to the same person for a half an hour, and we're lost in this conversation about our dogs, right? It's kind of like, where did the time go? And does this have any real application to what my goals are in being here? And the answer is no, in many cases. And it's important to kind of try and keep those things top of mind, to the point, not that you're trying to ignore the conversation that you're in, but that you're really thinking about what your goals are in being there and trying to make the most use of your time. Because often those networking events only go for 2, maybe 3 hours at best. Some of them are only an hour. And so you really want to maximize your time there. Number 2, make sure to have business cards, right? When people want to contact you after you've had a great conversation with them, you need to be able to hand them something, right? Whether you're a student and you have resumes on you and you can hand them a resume, that's like a business card, that's contact information. Or you can have a business card yourself. You can make one, even if you're a graduate student and you're just getting out there. You know, make yourself, it costs $5 or $10, right? Make yourself a standard business card that just has your email address, your name, your phone number, you know, how to get a hold of you, how to contact you. If you are caught cold without any information on you and you really want to share your information, because this has happened to me where I've attended events and then I've handed out all of the cards and I don't have any more cards left in my pocket. If I don't have any more cards on me, I'm like, oh no, what do I do? This has worked to be able to go into your LinkedIn profile on your phone. You can go into your LinkedIn profile, and if you click into it's almost like the search box on the right-hand side, it'll allow you to open up a QR code that will link to your LinkedIn profile. Okay, so this is kind of what I use as my last ditch effort, is I will open up that QR code and I'll have somebody scan that QR code on my phone, and they can automatically, it's not friending on LinkedIn, it's creating a colleague or something. I forget what the exact term is right now, but they can connect with me on LinkedIn via that QR code, and at least they have my contact information in that way if I've run out of business cards or I don't have anything on me. And then the last 2 here are really just basic ground rules, right? Dress semi-professionally. I'm not saying to dress in a suit everywhere you go. I'm just saying, maybe put on a nicer shirt, have a decent, have some nicer shoes on, maybe not, your everyday shoes for walking around on the streets, just a little bit nicer shoes. So, because your first impression really does count when it comes to these networking conferences, right? And then smile. And I put smile in there, particularly for people that may not come from this culture, right? The United States has a really, really strong, we have a really strong culture of smiling all the time. We smile all the time. It's bred into us, right? Culturally. So we associate, at least in North America, we associate lots of smiling with a friendly person that you can trust. And that may not necessarily be the default in many cultures around the world. It's not as easy to openly smile in many cases. So people who are coming here from other cultures and networking at these conferences, do be sure to practice smiling. I know that sounds silly and I'm sorry, but it's going to make you a little bit more approachable for people who are from a North American culture. Okay, elevator pitch. This is really This is really the best kind of weapon you can have when you're going into a networking conference, right? If you have a solid elevator pitch down and ready to go, then you feel a lot more confident when you're approaching these groups of people. So purpose overall of an elevator pitch, right? It's called an elevator pitch because it is a quick summary that you can give in the time it takes to take an elevator with somebody, right? And the time it takes for you to get into an elevator, push a button, go up 2 floors, and then get out of the elevator. That is the time that you need to have been able to create this pitch. And the pitch is really just a summary of who you are and what you're looking for, right? So if you look here, it's setting the tone of the conversation. It's you coming in, introducing yourself, stating your goals, and seeing if you have if you have commonality with the person with whom you're talking to in a networking event. So it sets that tone of the conversation. An impactful elevator pitch, as I say here, is designed with a specific outcome in mind. So really sit down and think about what is your desired outcome. You know, what are your goals of going to that networking event? And it may be something like making new contacts, right? You may not actually have a specific goal in mind, but that goal might be, oh, I want to meet more people in the geophysics field. I want to get more contacts and grow my network within this community. That could actually be your goal in and of itself. Or you could be there for a more specific reason, right? You could be there for a professional reference, whether it be a job, whether it be getting into a certain graduate school program, whether it be meeting up with other people who are doing research in the same field as what you're doing research, and you would like their feedback or insight on the work that you're doing. You could have a variety of different goals when you're going there. Just make sure to have that goal in mind, right? So really think about your goals before you go into that networking event. Consider the following questions when writing your elevator pitch, right? So what credibility do I bring to the table? And that's important, right? Imagine going up to somebody at a conference and they just say, oh, you know, I'm John Smith. I'm just kind of here for fun, you know, and that's all they say about themselves. If that's what you get from somebody, are you going to be interested in continuing that conversation with that person that you just met? Probably not, right? You're at that point, you're saying, you know, I should probably start looking for another group to join. So give yourself a little bit of credibility, right? Even if you're a student and you've only been studying for 1 year of a bachelor's degree, that is still credibility, right? Talk about who you are, talk about your name, say what you're studying, say what you're interested in. Right? These give credibility to the reason you're there and what you're looking for, and that they make you more exciting and interesting to that person who's entering that conversation with you. So even if you don't have the confidence when you enter that conversation, that confidence in whatever you're studying or whatever you're doing, fake it, right? Just kind of put that confidence and that energy out there, because I'm telling you, once you do it a couple of times, it will start to feel natural. And people are genuinely drawn to people that exude confidence. So if you exude confidence, again, whether it's real or not, most people are not confident. So you're not alone. It's really faked by everybody. You know, we're all fairly unsure about what we're saying. And so just kind of try and put yourself out there the best you can. And people are really going to respond to that, both that confidence and that vulnerability of saying, hey, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking for. So be specific. The more you know about who you want to meet and why, the easier it is for other people to introduce you to these people. If you can specifically say, this is what I'm looking for, the person that you're talking to is going to respond, because we as humans, we want to help other people, right? In general, unless you're talking to somebody who's really mean, which you probably want to move on from that conversation anyway. You probably don't want to talk to them anymore. But in general, people want to help other people. So if you can really state very clearly what you're looking for, the other person is going to try and make suggestions, or going to try and make these connections for you if they can help. Mention, why are you different from other people in the room? You know, what makes you unique? You know, it might be in a room full of other students, but are the other students interested in the same research as you? Are you interested in different research? Are you interested in different topics? You know, what makes your background in the industry a little bit different? Maybe you come from somewhere else, right? And can give more context to where you've come from and what you're working on. And then last but not least, if it's possible, always try and find something that you can help the other person with, right? What's in it for them? So we're not only there for us, you know, to try and build our network and to try and get more contacts for us within a networking conference, we're also there for the other person, right? And so the next couple of slides after we go through the elevator pitch, we're going to talk about how to create that rapport and that commonality with somebody that we're just meeting for the first time. But a lot of that starts with the idea in mind of, you know, even if I'm, again, a student and I don't necessarily have a lot of background in the industry yet, you know, ask and listen and see if there's some way that you can help them or give them feedback or support them in their work as well, right? Because you can do more of this than you probably think that you can. Okay, so an example elevator pitch, I just kind of wrote this up really quickly last night. Obviously, it doesn't apply to me right now, but this is an example of an elevator pitch that you could potentially give if I were a recent graduate. You know, I could say, hi, my name is Leah Martinez. I am a recent graduate from the Colorado School of Mines in Geophysical Engineering. I am excited about research related to induced polarization and electrical borehole geophysics applications in metals mining. You know, very specific, right? I'm looking for a good doctoral program focused on this type of research. Do you have any recommendations for where to begin my search? Right, so this is kind of a good overall elevator pitch because it captures everything, right? I immediately introduce myself. In the next line, I very quickly give my credibility, right? I'm a recent graduate from this program in geophysical engineering. There's my credibility, right? That's why they should continue talking to me. I am excited about this specific type of research in metals mining, right? So that's what makes me unique in that group of students. So if I were in a big group of students, the thing that makes me unique is that I am interested in this specific research topic, right? Then I say what I need. What I need is I'm looking for a good doctoral program focused on this type of research. That's something I need. And then the last thing in there is what we call the call to action, right? The call to action is a question, or it's the kind of cliffhanger at the end there where you're saying, do you have any ability to perhaps help me with this? Do you have any recommendations for where to begin my search? And that's optional, right? You don't necessarily need a call to action at the end of your elevator pitch. Maybe you just want to approach a group and say who you are and what you're interested in. That's fine as well. If you don't have any real clear-cut goals, then you don't necessarily need to include the call to action at the end. But these are all of the different pieces, right? Introduction, credibility, unique thing about myself, what I'm looking for, what my goals are, and then call to action, right? And again, this can all be said fairly quickly in the time that I can take an elevator. I'm not adding any more additional fluff or information in here. And your elevator pitch could be shorter or it could be slightly longer than this as well. So you have some room to work with. Once you have your elevator pitch put together, the next thing I would recommend from there is practice, practice, practice. I'm really not kidding. Memorize the sucker. Memorize it word for word, practice it in front of a mirror, practice it in front of your mom, practice it in front of your friends, practice it in front of everybody. They're going to laugh and joke, you know, and point fingers at you, but these are people you love and you trust, so they can help you tweak this elevator pitch. Practice it in front of everybody and practice it until it's memorized and it's secondhand. Because only when it's memorized is it going to start sounding natural, right? Because if you don't practice it very much and you try to go up to a group of people and you say exactly what this says right here, I'm going to sound like a robot. And nobody wants to talk to a robot. Everybody wants to talk to somebody who's personable. So once I have this memorized, I can start to deliver it in a way that's more personable. Maybe I tweak some words here and there as I'm saying it. I change some words. And when I talk about it like that, it's going to begin to sound natural. It's going to begin to sound like I didn't practice it. And then the other thing it's going to do is it's going to give me that confidence again, that confidence to walk up to a group of people and give that initial introduction, because I already know what I'm going to say. You're not going to have this panic point where you're like, oh my gosh, if I walk up, what am I going to say? And you're trying to like rehearse in your head ahead of time before you talk to the group. You're trying to rehearse in your head, oh, maybe I should say this, and then I should say this. And then you're thinking about it a million times as you're walking up to the group, and they're continuing to talk. And so you're not actually listening to what the group is talking about, you know, until you get that space and time to introduce yourself. You're just continually waiting for that space and time and going it over in your head a million times. Whereas if you already have that elevator pitch ready, you're able to focus on their conversation as you come into it. So practice, practice, practice is the overall goal there for the elevator pitch. So once you have the elevator pitch, I'm going to shift real quick, shift gears here. And give me 1 second, grab a drink. I apologize that I talk very quickly. I know that I do this for everybody on the call, something I work on, and I'm not often very successful at. So apologies if some of this is hard to keep up, but I will try and slow my roll. I just get so excited sometimes. That's the other thing that's really key in networking conversations, actually, is bringing passion to what you talk about. People are really attracted to passion when you talk about something. So whether it's geophysics, or whether it's the recent trip you took with your family on a family vacation to Spain or wherever it was, whatever you're talking about, try and do it with passion, because people are attracted to that passion in other people. Anyway, moving on. So the slide that we're currently on is getting us into talking a little bit more about finding commonality with the other people in the group, whether it's a one-to-one conversation or whether it's a group conversation within a networking room. You're definitely going to want to try and find that commonality. And this is a science that has been studied to death by people in the sales industry, and we can learn from them because they really know how to do this. And so in taking some of these sales classes, I've learned quite a bit. And a lot of these techniques, really, they not only apply to networking conversations, but they also apply in other areas of our life. For example, you know, if I get into an argument with my husband, which happens, right? Marriages have arguments. If I get into an argument with him and he thinks one thing and I think the other, there's a way in which that I can approach the argument and use certain words and use a certain tone to really calm things down and to bring us back into harmony, right? And make sure that he knows that I'm listening and that I hear what he is saying and that I hear his side of whatever the argument is about, right? So a lot of these topics that we're going to talk about here, I believe they can really be used in all areas of our life, not just at a network, but also in our family. They can help when talking to young children who want to do things in a certain way and are very determined. So they can help us in talking and creating agreement in all areas of our life. So finding commonality, right? Rapport is established. Rapport is what we're trying to create here when we're talking to somebody in a networking room. We're trying to create this commonality between me and them. Person A is somebody who I don't know at all. I just met this person. They could be male, they could be female, they could be other gender, they could be a whole number of different things. And I don't know anything about them, but I do know that one of the things that I'm trying to find are things that relate us together, commonalities. At a geophysics conference, right? It's kind of one of the easy steps has already been done for you. You know that most of the people in that room are probably also geophysicists. And when you're also in a room with other geophysicists, that makes at least one topic you know is probably going to be similar, right? One person might be studying induced polarization and the other person might be, working in seismic for the oil and gas industry. So there might be, a difference in topics there, but we all come from the same general geology, geoscience backgrounds. And so we're able to connect in that way with each other. So you already, in general, have one commonality. but it's important to try and find additional commonalities. Rapport is destroyed by differences and disagreement. So when somebody mentions that I have a cat and somebody else in the group mentions that they have a dog, right? That might be true that you have a dog and the other person has a cat, but we don't necessarily want to focus on that, right? We don't want to focus on these differences. And we don't want to keep bringing up things in which we are different from the person we're talking to, right? So try and look for those commonalities that you have with the other person. The Ford idea here is a really common way to create commonality with somebody. So most people are driven by these very basic topics, right? Family, occupation, recreation, dreams. If you focus on these 4 different topics when you're talking to somebody initially, you can really create that rapport and commonality with them very quickly, right? Family is always key to people. If I have kids and you have kids and they're generally the same age, we could go on talking about that for probably the next 5 hours, right? People with kids love talking about their kids. And, that's an easy way to create rapport with somebody, is talking, oh, I have a teenage daughter, and this teenage daughter, she's doing these, she's driving me insane. She's into this, this, and this. And then you start getting on that topic. And that immediately creates this kind of bond between you and the person you're talking to, if you have these things in common. Obviously, occupation, we're going to work conferences. So if we have similar research areas, if we have similar schools that we've gone to, right? If you're an alumna with somebody who's gone to that same school or been through that same program, that's a great way of creating rapport and commonality. Recreation, right? Do we have the same sports in common? Do we go to the same gym? Where are you going for vacation? Maybe your vacation is in the same place that I'm going for vacation, or maybe you've already been there last year and you can give me some tips and some insights on where you're going, right? Focus on these big main topics. And then dreams are really the key to everything. If you can get someone to talk about their dreams, and this is kind of expert level, right? If you can make your way to expert level and you've created enough foundation and trust with the person you're talking to, that they can then start opening up to you about what their dreams are in their life, then you know that you've hit the jackpot. You know that something good is happening here, if somebody's willing to share their dreams with you. And the same goes in the opposite direction, right? If you find yourself really opening up to somebody and digging deep, really into the gut and talking about what really drives and moves you, people will respond to that. So if you are able to be vulnerable enough and open up and talk about what really moves you and what your dreams are, whether it may be occupationally or in your life or in your family, it could be any one of those things. But if you really don't just talk about things that are superficial, if you dig down deep and talk from the stomach and the gut, you will see that other people you are talking to will respond like that. They will respond in the same way. So find commonality, right? So these are just some basic ways and topics that you can find that commonality. I included a little picture here of people sharing shoes, right? Putting somebody else's shoes on their feet. Really, when you're finding commonality, you can find commonality, like I said, in things like goals, values, right? If you come from a more, Christian or religious background, you can find values in common with that person. Your geography, you might come from the same location as that person. Problems, experiences, there's a whole number of ways that you can create commonality. One of the key ways that I don't think people use enough in creating commonality in these situations is body language. So there's this saying, right, that body language is something like 90% of the conversation. I don't know if it's 90%, but I will say that it is a lot of the conversation. So what I try and do when it comes to body language is I try and mirror the other person, right? That's another way of finding commonality. If somebody is standing with their hands on their hips in a certain way, then I will also start taking that pose. I will also start mirroring the hands on the hips in a certain way. If they have a very closed posture, You might want to mirror it, but closed posture can also mean that they're putting up a wall between you and them, right? So you might want to, instead of mirroring the closed posture, you might want to make a more open posture, right? Maybe try the Superman stance or something like that to really open up and show them that you are being open with them. And you will find that once they are start agreeing with you, they will also change their posture to mirror your posture. And people do this subconsciously. So it's really fun to, like, when you know that this is happening, it's kind of fun to watch sometimes. Breathing, that's expert level. So if you are able to match your breathing to the other person's breathing, that is an expert level way of creating that commonality. And then tone, right? Tone is, I do this actually at work all the time. When somebody calls on the phone and they need, let's say they need technical support, I'll have some people that call and they talk like this. They talk very slowly and low. And I have other people that talk, almost like they're really high pitched and they're very fast. I will often try and mirror their tone of the person that is talking to me on the phone call, because I know that puts them in a state of mind where they feel like that they are being heard, right? So whether I'm agreeing with them or not, if I can match their tone and the way that they are saying these words, I know that subconsciously in their heads creates that commonality, and that makes it easier for us to have a good communication. And the last thing I think I want to point to is words, right? So words, if somebody keeps saying that something is awesome, man, that was an awesome thing you did, right? You can actually start using that same word, but maybe later on in the conversation, using that same phrase or word that they are using, and that will also create that commonality. Where are we on time? Just want to make sure. Okay. Wall, watch, ask, listen, learn. So really becoming a good listener. I'm going to speed it up a little bit because I know we're getting into the talk, but create rapport through listening, right? So watch the person, ask the person lots of good questions, listen and learn from them. So being a great listener is very hard. As you can probably tell from this talk, I talk a lot and I have problems with listening. So this is something that I personally am constantly working on. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but people do want to feel important and heard, and listening to them, actually, closing your mouth and listening to them is really the best way to transfer that feeling of importance over to them. So you can diminish that rapport if you're not listening to what the other person is saying, right? If you're looking down at your cell phone while somebody's talking to you, if you're not giving them eye contact, if your eyes are away from them, or if you get that kind of bored look on your face where people can tell that you're only thinking your own thoughts and you're not actually listening to what they are saying, we as humans, we know when somebody is not listening to us. And it may be subconscious, we may subconsciously know that somebody is not listening to us, but we know that, right? So be sure to pay attention. And the easiest way to pay attention really is to prepare before you start talking to them. Part of that preparation is already having an elevator pitch, already knowing the main topics that you want to hit in that conversation. If you've kind of prepared yourself before you go into it, then you are better able to give them your full attention when you are actually in the conversation, right? If you're not preparing in your head for what the next thing it is you're going to say, then you can give them that full attention. Magic methods mirroring. So I already talked about mirroring body posture, right? Mirroring body posture. This is really commonly talked about in a lot of these networking and business type books. But mirroring also works magic when it comes to words. So not even just using the same word, awesome, but if you can repeat the last 3 words of what somebody says to you. For example, right? Somebody's talking to you about a research project they just did. I was just working on this research project at the Colorado School of Mines. It was great, and we have some interesting results. Interesting results. Did you see my response there? All I had to do was say the last 2 words of whatever they just said, right? The last 2 or 3 words, they said, oh, we had some interesting results from that project. And all I have to do is say interesting results. and leave it at that, as if it's a question, and they will just continue talking. They will tell me more about what their interesting results were. And I can actually, it's funny, you might want to practice this yourself in a one-on-one with somebody, but you can have a full conversation with somebody by just continuing to say the last 2 words, last 2 or 3 words of whatever it is they have said. If you just continue to say the last 2 or 3 words, and then you go up on the end of it as if it's a question, they will continue to give you more and more and more information. It's amazing. And it also creates that bonding because they really feel that you're listening to them because you're repeating the exact same wording that they are using. You're repeating the same words. This is a neat trick that I use occasionally when I'm able to put myself in the right frame of mind. This trick is really used when you are entering a networking conference. If you want to get up the confidence to go up and talk to somebody, all you need to do is kind of psych yourself out and think about somebody who is a really good friend of yours. Think of a good friend in your head that you have not seen in a very long time, but maybe you miss talking to them. When you think about them, they give you that warm feeling inside and you have lots of good memories with them. Think of that person in your head, really focus on it, this person. Put the energy into thinking about those memories. And as soon as you start to feel your body react to those wonderful memories that this person alights in your head, at that moment, turn to the new person next to you in a networking conference and reach out and shake somebody's hand and introduce yourself. If you treat somebody like they are your best friend, you're not verbalizing that they are your best friend, but your body language and your face and the way in which you're smiling at them, it gives them the impression that you're their best friend already. If you're treating them like this because that person, this other person who's not in the networking conference is in your head, right? And that's who you're thinking about. But if you reach out and shake the hand of somebody new as you're in that mindset, the other person will respond in like kind. They will also start to treat you as if you already have this rapport with them. So it's a really easy way of creating instant rapport with somebody. You just have to put yourself in the right frame of mind to do it in the first place. So I know we're running on in time here. I'm going to go through these last ones fairly quickly. Just leading questions, right? Really focus on questioning, using questions to get to where you would like to in the conversation. Questions allow you to be direct. You can ask permission questions. There's different types of questions like A and B questions, hot potato questions. I'm not going to go too deeply into this because, like I said, this is a class that could take a week between different sessions. But as they were saying, this is going to be recorded, and I'm happy to give out this. Webinar to anybody who would like to look into this a little bit more. So A and B questions narrows down a decision process, gives a perception that an answer is the other person's idea. Framing is preparation and putting somebody in a mindset before you give them a certain type of news. So framing helps people to accept your ideas. I'm not going to give too many examples on this again, because I think we're running out of time. I only put 20 slides in this, but I'm talking too much about each slide. Creating discontent and contentment, right? So you can ask certain questions like, what do you like about your job? Or why would I be a good candidate for this role, right? If you're in a job interview and they ask you, do you have any questions for us at the very end of the interview? A really great question for that person that's interviewing you would be, why would I be a good candidate for this role? Because then that person that's doing the interview is going to start to answer you, and they're going to answer you with a list. They're going to say, you would be a good candidate for this role because of this and this and this and this. And once somebody makes a positive list about you and why you would be good for that role, you have actually already taken one big step towards solidifying in their mind that you should be the person that is accepted for that role, right? So you can use this kind of creating contentment through leading questions as a way to really get your foot in the door for different roles. Or what about my resume stands out as a reason to take a second look at my application, right? What about this resume that you're looking at stands out to you? And then they will say, oh, you know, these are the good things I really like about your resume. And that helps them to focus on those positive aspects of your resume. And it helps them to ignore those negative aspects that might be in there that might get you in the way of getting that job or whatever your goal is, right? So keywords, I just wanted to throw these out there so that people had them. Instead of labeling something, maybe put something in the context of it seems. For example, if you're in an argument with somebody, instead of saying you are angry or you're angry at this situation, you could say it seems that you are angry, right? When you add it seems to a context, it actually removes you from being the person that's doing the pointing. So it seems can be a very, very key phrase in removing you from conflict in the situation, is if you're labeling the situation as separate from you. The word fair is a very heavy word in many language contexts. So if you're able to respond to somebody with the word fair, saying this seems fair or this doesn't seem fair, it actually is a word that stands out auditorily to somebody. They weight that word more strongly. If you're in disagreement with somebody about a topic, use the word and instead of the word but. I disagree with you. I agree with you on this topic, but I disagree with you on this other topic. All you hear is the but in there. All anybody hears is the but. But if you say, I agree with you on this and I disagree with you on this, that leaves room for both of those thoughts to exist. And it allows you to argue from a much stronger point of view. Picture and imagine is a really good phrase to use at the beginning of framing something. 3 H's, happening, happen, happening, happen, right? When you make a promise, you create an expectation. And then when you fulfill that promise, you build trust. So promises are really key words and strong to use as well when creating rapport. And then the last thing I just really wanted to focus on, I know we're kind of going over time, is the follow-up, because I find that this is really key, right? This is where the follow-up to a networking conference is really hard, but these are the key things that you guys really need to do. So if you don't pay attention to any other slides, please pay attention to this one. Immediately after chatting to somebody, make a quick name about their name, their goals, and the call to action, right? You might need to follow up with them about something or need to look up something for them, but write this down immediately, because trust me, you will forget, no matter, unless you've got one of those photographic memories, which I don't. But write it down literally before talking to the next person in the conference. So write it on a business card. It can be a small notebook, or I actually take it as a note on Evernote in my phone, because I usually have my phone in my hand, right? So I just take it as a quick Evernote, because people think I'm texting somebody in between the conversation, but I'm actually just making a note about who I talk to. And then follow up with them within a couple of days, even if it is just to say, hi, I wanted to pass along my contact info and thank you for the great conversation. So make sure to do that follow-up. Connect with them on social media like LinkedIn, because you never know when you're going to need to reach out to that contact again. And then contact them longer term if they could be a key contact for you, or if you agreed to do something for them. If you said, oh, hey, you know, that research you're doing on this or that, there's a paper I know of that would be really relevant for you, I'll send that on to you. Make sure that you actually do that. If you make a promise to send them a piece of paper, to send them information after your conversation, make sure to follow through with that, because that's a really easy way to build trust and rapport. So this is the last slide. This is just recommended reading. A lot of these things that I mentioned in here come from these different books. So these are great overall books that can be applied to sales and marketing and business, but I honestly think that they are good overall books for life. Like I said, a lot of these topics are useful when talking to anybody in any situation. So I highly recommend taking a deeper dive into this. Never Split the Difference is great, and it's really just interesting, right? It's from a past FBI negotiator for like hostage negotiation. And so he's really able to break down how we react to different questions and different situations in a really interesting way. So that's it. I hope that some of you found it useful. I'm sorry for going too long overboard, and hopefully there's some Q&A that we're able to get to before this closes up. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah. That was quite insightful. And I'm sure that the audience learned a lot. I learned so many new things about networking. And we have a couple of questions, starting from the first thing that you said about speed dating. So somebody asked, Mayo Thompson asked, how do you break away from a conversation?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Usually it's hard to break away from a conversation. Usually I'll say, you know, I'll just be honest about it. You've got to always be honest, right? In these conversations, be upfront, be honest, say, hey, it's been great talking to you. I need to go meet with somebody over here in this other group, right? Because you need to go meet with somebody in another group so that you can continue to network. So just tell them, you know, hey, it's been great talking to you. I'm glad to meet you. I would really like to follow up after this conversation, you know, connect sometime, whether you live in the same location and you can meet over coffee or whether it's just an email, but say, you know, hey, let's connect however we can. And I'm going to go over here and continue making my way around the room, right? Just be direct about it. People appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So the second was like a comment from an anonymous. He said, more than a question, he said, try to find a place where you can have a comfortable conversation for 10 to 15 minutes. Some crowded areas are complicated due to noise or people who come to say hello and may interrupt. So how do you do that to try to find a place where there's no noise so that you can have this conversation?
It's very hard. I mean, whoever made this comment, you hit the nail on the head. It can be very hard to find a location. For example, there's been times that I've gone, you know, in networking, right? You might be invited out to a dinner or a bar afterwards to meet somebody afterwards and have a conversation, but sometimes the noise in that location can be too much and you can't even hear what they're saying. If that's the situation, then you're not networking at that point. You need to leave, right? You need to find a new location. And I've been to networking events, for example, that were held by my company. So I knew every single person in that room. And in that situation, can it be hard because you have people constantly coming up to you and saying hi or asking for something or asking a question. So it can really be hard to have those one-on-one conversations in that context. If you know that you're going to have a lot of people coming up to you, taking your attention away from this one person in front of you, then it might be a good idea to schedule that conversation for another time with that person in front of you and just say, hey, do you have time later on to meet up and talk about this in more depth? This social situation seems like it's not a good setting for us to really have this conversation here right now. You might want to schedule it for a later time.
Oh, yes, I agree with you on that because it happens to me most times, you know, when you go to conferences, you get people always saying hi and hello, and you're just distracted with the person you're in front of. And I've never really thought about that rescheduling. So thank you so much for answering that. And Mayo Thompson asked again, for initiating conversation, do you open with Ford? I don't know if you understand that question.
I initiate a conversation generally with the elevator pitch, right? I'll give a quick overview about who I am. The other person will then generally initiate the conversation on their side with their elevator pitch, right? They'll then respond by telling me about who they are. And usually from the elevator pitch, I can just build from there, right? They can say, oh, you know, I'm so-and-so, I study this, I do that. And I usually respond by saying something like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm interested in that. Or if I don't find any commonality in their elevator pitch, you know, let's say they do a type of research that's very different from me, or I'm not really able to help them very much with what they're looking for. I then start to ask them, you know, about the Ford questions. I'll ask them, you know, geographically, where do you live? I'll ask them what kind of work they're doing. I'll ask them, you know, what is their family like? Do they have kids? Are they married? You know, I'll start to ask them, you know, what recreation, what are you interested in doing? Oh, I'm from Colorado. Oh, you're from Utah. Do we both go skiing or snowboarding? You know, trying to find those forward questions, those questions that really create the commonality. I'll just start spitballing questions, right? People love being asked about themselves. Again, it's getting the focus on them, keeping that focus on who they are, what's important to them. Because the more you ask somebody about themselves, it actually makes that person, after a little while, they then start to realize that they need to ask you about yourself, right? If somebody is asking me 3 questions about myself, I'm going to answer, but then I'm going to respond by saying, and how about you? You know, what do you like doing? So that's an easy way of building rapport, is that kind of back and forth by starting being the person to ask the questions.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. Then we have another question here from anonymous attendee. He said, is it common to ask for available job positions in a company at their booths as a fresh PhD? To whom should we talk and how to do it constructively?
That's a great question. That's a really good one. But yes, it is common. I am at a trade show booth very often, and we do have people that come up to the booth and ask us if we have, I would ask it in the context of, do you have any job openings, right? Do you guys have any openings right now for geophysicists, right? Because we obviously, for example, in my company, we have openings right now for repair technicians, but that's not necessarily what you want, right? So you want a specific type of opening within a company. What I would do in that is, if I came up to somebody at a trade show booth and I was looking for work, I would give the elevator pitch, explain who you are, explain what your background is, what is your credibility, and it doesn't have to be long. Just, I went to this school, I studied this thing, I'm interested in this kind of work. Right now, this is what makes me unique and interesting. Right now, I'm looking for this kind of work. And then end it with, can you help me? Right? Because that company that you're talking to in the booth, they might not have a job opening, but we might know of somebody that does have a job opening. I will say that a lot of times our customers and our colleague companies, right? Colleague companies being other geophysical equipment companies, they will let us know when they have a job opening. So they will come to us and say, let us know if you hear of anybody that's looking for this kind of work. So just going around and asking people, not just if they have openings, but if they know of anybody that has an opening, that's going to be really, really key, because they can make those connections for you.
Okay, thank you so much. And then Julian thank you for your presentation and the advices. He said it was so easy to follow you, so I don't think you were fast after all. And I think, yeah. Okay, there's a hand up.
Hi, thank you for this nice presentation. I'm Puku from LSU. I'm currently done with my first year master's. My question is, mostly you go to these conferences and, like they are in groups, right? So my question is it appropriate? What's the best way to break into such groups? And how do you kind of get into the conversation once they are already set in groups? Or do you wait and look out for just one person who is standing there to approach? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
That's a great question. And like I said, I think we all struggle with it. You're not the only one. We all do. Usually what I have done and found to be the most useful is I don't try and find the single person. If there is a single person, then I'll talk to them, obviously. If they're standing right next to me, why not? But if I want to get into a group, I'll obviously look for a space between the people that are shoulder to shoulder, right? I'll look for a space, and then I'll walk up into that space. As soon as I walk into the space, everybody, their heads will turn and they'll look at me, right? But there's somebody that's already talking in the group, right? There's somebody that's continuing to talk because I just entered in the middle of their conversation. So all the heads will turn to look at me. At that point in time, I just smile, right? I just say, and I don't say anything. I just smile. I let the person who's talking continue to talk. That person will talk. Sometimes there will be another person that'll respond right away. So I still won't get to say anything, right? And there's another person that's continuing to talk in that group. And a lot of times I'll just take that opportunity to really try and figure out where the conversation already is, right? I'll just be listening to the people talk and trying to figure out where the conversation is. But as soon as there is a pause of any, decent time, usually it's just a couple of seconds, right? You can hear it. As soon as there's a pause for even just a couple of seconds, all of the heads will look at me again because they don't know who I am. I'm a new person in their group. They'll look at me again, and that's when I'll give, the elevator pitch. Hi, I'm Leah. This is what I do. This is the company I'm from. This is what we're interested in doing here. and I won't try and be too salesy because if I'm trying to do sales, you can't come off as too salesy. I'll just say who I am and what I do. And then I'll let them continue the conversation. They might start to ask me questions, or they might just continue the conversation as it was now that I've been introduced to the group, right? And then slowly I can insert different opinions and ideas into the conversation that was already existing. You don't want to hijack the entire conversation for yourself and direct it in a different way, because that just doesn't come off very well. So those are kind of the minute steps that I go through when entering a new group.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, I do have my question. Yeah, for the business card, please, do you have any specific format for students, like undergraduate students, seeing that they don't really have much? What should actually be on that business card?
I would choose a business card I would honestly just choose a white matte card, MATTE, right? So not glossy. You want something that is easy to write on, right? So that people, when they take your card, that they can make a note on it. If they want to make a note about you after talking to you, that they can write on your card, right? So those white matte business cards, the cheapest you can get, I would put my name right in the middle. I'd say something like Leah Martinez, graduate student or undergraduate student, just be honest about who you are and what you're doing. Put your university, if you just graduated, or if you could be a recent graduate, or put the university underneath that, and then put your phone number and put your email address. That's really all you have to do. You don't have to put any logo on it. You don't need to put any picture on it. You don't need any more information than really just your name. In general, what you do. Are you a student? Are you a researcher? What are you doing? And then contact information. You don't have to include an address of any kind if you don't want to. You can include an address if you want to. If you want to give context to where you're living, as far as a location, if you're interested in staying in that geographic location, you can add that information to the card. But really, it doesn't have to be much. You're just giving something tactile to somebody to hold on to or make a note on.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So the next is in terms of follow-up. When you were talking about follow-up, you said something about chatting the person directly, thanking them for the conversation. What about like sending people all these holiday messages or happy new month? Is that a good way to follow up?
You're talking about the messages on LinkedIn where they're saying like happy work anniversary or happy birthday, things like that?
Yes, something like that.
I really don't find those very useful. I get a lot of them on LinkedIn. I'm not bragging, but I've got like 2,000 plus contacts on LinkedIn just from being in the industry for a long time and going to a lot of conferences. So a lot of those kind of happy birthday and happy work anniversary type texts that I get, they don't help in my context. I do pay attention to them if it's somebody that I know personally face to face and have had recent conversations with, if it's a friend or colleague or somebody from the industry that I know, and then they send me a happy work anniversary, then I'll respond to those and I'll say, thank you, appreciate it, because I know that they actually care about it being a work anniversary. But if it's somebody, from across the world that I maybe met one time, then it's not all that helpful.
Okay.
What I do find helpful is if they comment on posts, right? So if I make a post about, let's say we're talking about social media now, but if I make a post, and it doesn't even have to be work related, it could be, something geophysics related. If I share it, or if I like it, or if I make a comment on it, if they do any of these things on my post, I see it, and that keeps that person top of mind, right? Then I'm thinking, oh, so-and-so liked this post. That's great.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Because I wanted to ask you, if you're not doing this, how do you make the person to keep you at the top of their mind, so that it will not be that you just contact the person when you need their help, Okay,
Yeah.
but you answered it now. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if okay, we have another okay. Someone said okay, Nancy House. Wow, good to have you here. Said I find LinkedIn messaging cumbersome. Once initial contact is established, I usually request follow-up to email and phone that is shared.
Mhm.
So I think it's the same with you. Thank you for that contribution, Nancy. Good to have you here too. So Laurie, do we have any other hand raised, or should we just wrap it off here?
No hands and no further questions, although I'm sure people are thinking of questions. So
Oh,
I think we're good for this time. And
okay.
perhaps we'll follow this up with more in-depth, like interactive stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We had talked about potentially having people try and make their own elevator pitches here, and then seeing if some people could share their elevator pitches and we could give feedback in real time.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, thank you so much, Leah. Thank you all for attending the SCG Surface Geophysics Technical Section Student Subcommittee Critical Skills Series webinar on how to network at conferences. I'm sure that we learned a lot. I personally did. So please respond to the webinar follow-up email. Let us know what you liked, what could be done better, and suggestions for future webinar topics. And for those of you that are asking for a link, the Laurie has posted that you just watch out for our YouTube channel. The recording will be uploaded there and you'll be notified as well. So please look out for our social media posts to register for future webinars. We have the soft skills, the software series coming up soon, and I'm sure you like that too. So again, I want to thank you for attending today, and thank you so much, Leah Martinez, for joining us today. It was quite an insightful section with you.
Thank you too.
Yeah, so enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.